Hi everyone, and welcome back. In this video, we're going to go and check on our instance just to make sure that it's up and running and that there are no issues with it. And as long as that's the case, then what we will do is we'll go and download, install, and configure a software package called PuTTY. PuTTY will enable us to log into our EC2 instance. So let's get started. Let me get out of your way here, and let's open up a web browser and log into our AWS account. Once we're there, again, we can either search for EC2 up here in the search bar, or if we've been there before, it will show up in our recently visited services. So let's go ahead and click on EC2 here. And what we want to do is, it may take you to the instances here. If not, that's where we want to go. So on the left-hand menu, if you click Instances to expand it, and then click on Instances here, that will take you to your instances, and you may only have one. Okay, so I've got 3 here. I've got 1 that was terminated. I've got 2 that are running and 2 that have no issue. Status checks were passed, so that's good. So the instance that we created in the last video is this bottom one here. And again, I can click on it and see some more statuses about it. Again, I can see that it's running. I can see the public IP address of the instance, which we will use that here in a little bit to log into the instance. So we'll come back and grab that when we need it. But at this point, let's go ahead and download and install PuTTY. To do that, let's go ahead and we'll just open up a new tab in the browser. And if we search for download PuTTY, P-U-T-T-Y, oh, Facebook Messenger. I don't need that open. Anyway, download PuTTY, hit the enter key. And if we scroll down at putty.org here, there's a link to download PuTTY. We'll click on that. And up here at the top, it says download PuTTY and download PuTTY here. We can click there. That'll bring up the latest release files for PuTTY. Now, I'm installing this on a Windows machine. And you can either pick the 32-bit installation or the 64-bit installation. Okay? If you're running a 64-bit machine and you are running a 64-bit version of Windows, you can use the 64-bit. If you're not sure if you've got a 32-bit or a 64-bit machine, or if you're running a 32-bit or 64-bit version of Windows, no problem. Just download the 32-bit version. It'll work for all that. So I'm going to go ahead and click on this link here beside 32-bit x86 to download PuTTY 0.76 installer. And that should open up a box to ask me where I want to download that to. And I'll just put that in my downloads folder. Save it there. And the download's complete. So let me open up the downloads folder. And we can see the PuTTY 0.76 installer file here. Let me go ahead and double click on that to install it. Click Next. This is just asking where I want to install it at. The default directory is fine with me. Click Next. Product features, these defaults are fine. It's going to install PuTTY. It's going to put an install directory on the path for the command prompts, which we're not going to be using that, but that's okay. And it's going to associate .ppk files with PuTTYGen and Pagin, and that's fine too. So these defaults are fine. We can click Install. And it will go and install PuTTY. I don't want to view the README file at this point, so I'll uncheck that box and click Finish. And now what I can do is, let me go ahead and run PuTTY. So I'll go to my Start menu, and let me scroll down here to PuTTY and launch PuTTY. Okay. So this is what will pop up for you. This is PuTTY. I had installed PuTTY a while ago, and I use it for a few different things. So in yours, you won't see any IP address or anything there or a port number, and you won't have anything listed down here. Okay, it should just be blank. If it's not, that's fine too. We're going to configure this for what we need. So the host name or the IP address. here's where we need the public IP address of our instance. Okay, so if I go back to our AWS account in our instances, I want to copy this public IP address. Okay, so let me grab that, let me copy it, and go back into PuTTY, and I can paste it right in there. Okay, and if you remember, we said that PuTTY is going to use port 22 over an SSH connection to access our instance. So this is fine. Okay. Now, one other thing that we can do is if we want to put the login name here, we can. Now, for that Ubuntu image that we created, the default login for that instance is Ubuntu, which is UBUNTU with no password. So we can simply enter Ubuntu at, and then that public IP address over port 22 and an SSH connection to log us in. Okay? So our host name is Ubuntu, which again is just the default login for the instance, that Ubuntu instance, at the public IP address of the instance, port 22 over an SSH connection. All right. One other thing that we need to set up is over here underneath of connection. And again, if yours isn't expanded, hit the plus sign to expand it. Underneath SSH, we need to go down and click on where it says auth. Okay. What we need to do here is we need to tell it the private key file that we're going to be using for authentication. You remember when we created that key pair file, that's why we need it. We need it for this. So let's browse for that key file. If I click browse, and if I go to my downloads folder, there is the key pair that we created. That's the file I want. If you don't see that file, make sure down here on the bottom right, where it says the types of files that you're opening, make sure it's PuTTY private key files. Okay. So we want to select the key pair that we created and click open. And that'll put it there. All right. So what I'm going to do now is let me go back. I'm going to click on where it says session all the way up here at the top. I'm going to give this a session name under here where it says save sessions. I can type in a name. I'll type in video and let's say Ubuntu, if I can spell it right, UBUNTU. And if I click save, it'll save that into the list so I can select it later. So I don't have to come back and reconfigure all this. Now, if I want to connect to that session, or excuse me, connect to the instance, all I have to do is click on this open button. And if we configured everything correctly, it should log us into the instance. Okay. We do get an alert that says the host key isn't cached in the registry. That's okay. We can click accept. And it's trying to log us in. Up here at the top, you can see it was using username Ubuntu. It authenticated with the public key that we had created. And so we were successful. We are now logged into our AWS EC2 instance. All right. So we were successful with that. We'll go ahead and end the video at this point. In the next video, what we'll do is we will show how to get Node-RED installed on this instance, and we'll also show how to get Node.js installed, which we need both packages. All right, well, thank you guys very much for joining, and we hope to see you in the next video.